Have you ever achieved something you worked incredibly hard for? And instead of feeling proud, your brain immediately asked, what's next? You get the good grade. You want a better one? You get the job. You start thinking about the promotion. You reach your goal weight. Then you find another flaw. Someone compliments you, but one criticism stays in your head all day. If this sounds familiar, the problem may not be that you're failing. You may have trained your brain to believe that being good enough is never enough, and that's a much deeper problem. Some people live with an invisible rule. I'll finally feel good about myself when I become better. Better looking, smarter, more successful, more productive, more respected, more impressive. But here's the trap. The finish line keeps moving. You achieve one thing, and your brain immediately creates another condition for feeling worthy. Okay, but now do more. This is closely connected to perfectionistic concerns, the fear of making mistakes, falling short, or failing to meet extremely high standards. And research isn't saying that wanting to improve is automatically bad. That's an important distinction. Wanting to improve can be healthy. The problem begins when your self-worth becomes dependent on your performance. A 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis involving 83 articles and more than 32,000 adults found that perfectionistic concerns were moderately associated with lower self-esteem. So the problem isn't simply, I want to be better, it's, I must be better before I can respect myself. Psychologists Paul Hewitt and Flett have spent decades researching perfectionism. They identified different forms of it, including self-oriented perfectionism, demanding perfection from yourself, and socially prescribed perfectionism, believing that other people expect you to be perfect. And socially prescribed perfectionism creates a particularly nasty loop. You think, people will value me if I perform well. So you work harder. You succeed, but instead of feeling secure, the standard rises. Psychologist Flett described the mindset perfectly. The better I do, the better I'm expected to do. That's the trap. Success doesn't close the gap. Success moves the gap. And eventually you can become objectively successful while still feeling internally inadequate. Then there's comparison. You look at someone else's career, their body, their relationship, their house, their money, their confidence, their social media, and you compare their highlight reel to your behind-the-scenes footage. That's a rigged game, because even when you win your own race, you're watching someone else's race, and social pressure can make this worse. Research on socially prescribed perfectionism describes it as a chronic source of pressure, particularly when people feel they must meet expectations to be valued. So you don't ask, am I improving? You ask, am I impressive enough? Those are completely different questions. The first creates growth. The second creates anxiety. And here's where things become especially damaging. Imagine your best friend makes a mistake. Would you tell them, you're pathetic, you'll never be good enough? Probably not. But when you make the same mistake, your internal voice may say exactly that. Psychologist Kristin Neff, a major researcher in self-compassion, argues that self-compassion means responding to your own failures with kindness and understanding rather than harsh self-judgment. And that's not the same as becoming lazy. That's another misconception. Self-compassion doesn't say, don't improve. It says, you can improve without treating yourself like an enemy. You can admit, I messed up, without turning it into, I am a failure. That's a massive difference. So how do you actually break this cycle? First, separate your performance from your identity. You failed at something. That doesn't mean you are a failure. Second, stop moving the goalpost immediately. When you accomplish something, actually acknowledge it. But I said, don't give yourself 5 seconds of satisfaction before demanding the next achievement. Third, replace perfection with progress. Ask, am I better than I was? Not, am I perfect yet? And fourth, notice your internal language. When your brain says, I'm not good enough, ask, according to whom? Good enough for what? Compared to who? And based on what standard? Sometimes the standard you're desperately trying to meet was never actually yours. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You could spend your entire life becoming better and still never feel good enough. If you've made achievement the price of self-worth, there will always be someone smarter, someone richer, someone more attractive, someone further ahead. That's reality. But your value cannot depend on winning a comparison that never ends. You don't need to stop growing. You need to stop making your worth conditional on growth. Because the goal isn't to become a person who never improves. The goal is to become a person who can say, I want to become better, but I don't have to hate who I am today. And maybe that's what being good enough actually means.